Dvasta Guna Pravaham. They are very significant. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is never affected by the material qualities, although they all emanate from his spiritual energy. Those who are really conversant with this knowledge can utilize everything for the service of the Lord, because nothing in this material world is unconnected from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Wow, that's pretty cool. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Tarika Prabhu, since you are our shloka sleuth, could you find the verse about watering the root of the tree? From the...
That was a couple of verses ago.
Okay, let's go back.
Same chapter.
Let's find that, since it's slipping my memory here. Yes, yeah, no, not yes, yeah, Prabha. Oh, here we go. Yata toror mula nishechanena, tripyanti tatskanda bujopashaka. Prana pahorachcha yatindriyanam tatayava sarvarhanam achuteja. Okay, let's review that again. But first, we should say our pranam mantras. Om Agyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Brindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So Narada Muni is continuing with some instruction to the Prachetas, giving a very philosophical understanding of the Lord. We should know the Lord is the cause of everything. And because he is the cause of everything, we should directly engage in service to him, rather than concerning ourselves with the minor causes. This person did this thing, or this person said that, things went my way, it didn't go my way, blah, 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 blah. I have so many excuses to be a sense enjoyer. There's so many places to direct my attention so that I can pursue mundane sense enjoyment. We worship the cause of our sense enjoyment. Literally. People literally worship the cause of their sense enjoyment. They'll find some person, put all of their hope and dreams into one person to fulfill their desires. And they'll worship that person. They might not have an altar with lit candles and pictures and deities and things like that to the cause of their sense gratification, but they'll give all the devotion that is meant for the Lord. And that's the part where Narada Muni is saying, hey, if you recognize the supreme cause of everything is the Lord, then give your devotion to him alone, directly. What was it? Dvasta. Now I gotta go back to the verse here. He says, Adha, directly. Slatejas advasta guna pravaham. Oh no, he says ada, just directly engage in the service. Rather than being concerned with the other causes, the remote causes. The remote causes, the time factor, the material ingredients, the creator is the supreme cause, and we should just focus on that. Aristotle said something similar. He mentioned four causes, but he had this analogy, it was very similar, but he had this analogy of construction on a construction site. For there to be anything created, there has to be four causes. There have to be the builders, the ingredients, like the bricks and the mortar or whatever, some wood. There has to be a plan, a formal plan, like a blueprint, engineering blueprint. But ultimately, there is the desire of someone who wants the building. This was his whole point. Although he says four causes, and this says three, still the conclusion is the same, that there must be the desire of someone who wants the building. And that's the most important cause. Otherwise, there would not be the other ones. The builders, the materials, and the blueprint are not going to come together unless somebody wants to build it, usually someone who's financing the building. So we should focus on the supreme cause, the supreme personality of Godhead, rather than worrying about all this other stuff going on. We can say that this person is the cause of my happiness and this other person is the cause of my distress. If only my favorite sports team would win the World Cup or the World Series or whatever, then I'll finally be happy. That'll be the cause of my happiness. And if only this politician will be successful, then I'll finally get all my happiness. But these are just the remote causes, little tiny causes. We recognize Krishna as Sarva Karna Karnam, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, Anadir Adir Govindam, Sarva Karna Karanam. The Adi person, the Adi Purusha. And we are the Adidas. I wonder if that's where they got the name for Adidas, that brand, because in Sanskrit it means original servant. Pretty nice. We should aspire to be Adidas, originally a servant. But Krishna is the Adi Purusha and the Sarva Karna Karanam, the cause of all causes. We try to see Krishna behind everything. As devotees especially, we should consider ourselves very fortunate that we were under the Lord's spiritual energy, his divine energy. Right? He says that the Mahatma, the great soul, has the protection or the shelter of his divine spiritual energy. That means that he's causing what's happening in our lives. That's our faith as devotees. If we are great souls, Mahatmanas tumam parta, daivim prakritim ashita. Bhajantyananya manaso something, Rama Rama Hare Hare. He says something of that line. That if we're really great souls, we just have complete shelter of the divine energy, the spiritual energies. That means he causes what's happening in our lives. We're not under we should aspire to be under the protection of the Lord's internal spiritual energy, not the secondary causes, but directly. That's what Narada Muni is saying. So therefore, and this is a philosophical argument here, a logical argument, if you understand the Lord as Sarva Karna Karanam, as the supersoul of all individual living entities, then you should directly engage in service to him, thinking yourself qualitatively one with him, because that means you're beyond these causes also. In our spiritual nature, Satchit Ananda Vigraha, we have the same quality as Krishna. We're not meant to be controlled by secondary causes. We're not meant to be forced by the body and mind to accept all sorts of embarrassing circumstances. That's not our original nature. We are qualitatively one with the Lord. We're meant to have the same lifestyle. We're meant to have the same lifestyle. Krishna wants to share his lifestyle with us, believe it or not, in the spiritual world. So to have that faith that I'm under the control of Krishna, I'm under his protection, I'm I am under the shelter of the divine energy, Daivim Prakritim Ashrita. That is real faith. And one who has that faith, doesn't need anything else, doesn't have to worry about all the other causes and their effects. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice to have complete shelter of Krishna? But that's what Prabhupada is referencing here in this verse. That real faith is to have this sort of conviction that just by surrendering to Krishna, just by service to Krishna, that's it. That's all I need. What is the verse? Krishna Bhakti Kaila, it says, Shraddha Shabde Vishvasakahe. Literally, I guess it's Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami speaking this verse. He's saying, literally, this is the definition of faith. Shraddha Shabde Vishvasakahe is what they say. Sudrida Nishchaya Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Kritahoya. That just by doing Krishna Bhakti, just by serving Krishna, that's all I need to do. I don't need to depend on anything else or anyone else. I don't need to depend on, the latest cycle of political upheaval. That's not where I depend. I don't need to depend on the success or failure of some sports team. I don't need to depend on whatever imaginary number is in my bank account. It's not even real anyway. It's all just printed digitally and funneled into the hands of ambitious thieves. I don't need to depend on any of that. I can depend solely on Krishna. Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Kritahoy, and everything is taken care of. It's hard for us to believe sometimes, especially those of us who are grihastas and got it eking our way in this universe and trying to get by. But we should all, at least once in this lifetime, get the experience of just full surrender to Krishna. That's really what the ashram training is meant to be for. Just at least get the experience that I can just fully dedicate myself to Krishna and everything's taken care of. I don't need anything else. I experienced firsthand, actually. When I met the devotees in New Zealand and I entered into the brahmacharya ashram, and I was a pretty disturbed young man, as most of us are when we start coming to Krishna consciousness, in the category of distressed. And I had a very poor relationship with my family, having run away from home. Of course, I was broke as a joke. Just bumming around in some other country, trying to find something. And what I found was Krishna. And what I experienced is that by engaging fully in Krishna service in the ashram, that we are very fortunate to have what Devamrita Swami called one of the best brahmacharya ashrams in the world, where we just do Sankirtan. And I experienced firsthand how you can just do everything for Krishna all day. Sometimes we forget, those of us who even have been in the ashram, sometimes we forget in our later stages in life. We're thinking that we need all this other stuff. But we should remember that time when all I did was serve Krishna 24 hours a day, and everything was taken care of. My relationship with my family somehow healed while serving Krishna constantly. My financial situation got better somehow. Such that I had more opportunities after leaving the ashram. Everything was taken care of. My health was better. My, stereotypical teenage depression was resolved. My visa problems were resolved. I was trying to stay in New Zealand, and by joining the devotees, they had all sorts of clever ways to keep your visa. They got a million tricks up their sleeves in New Zealand because New Zealand is quite parochial. They don't like so many visitors. Well, they like visitors, but they don't like you to stay very long. All of these problems were solved. Everything was just taken care of by surrendering to Krishna, by just being concerned with Krishna. We all need to get that experience a few times in life, at least enough so that we can remember at the time of death that actually all I need is Krishna. Everything is taken care of. So Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying this is the definition of faith. Shraddha Shabde Vishvasakaye Sudrida Nishchoy Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Kritoy. Everything is done. Literally every action has been performed if one just does Krishna Bhakti. So that's remarkable. And this is a level of faith we can come to with this knowledge. Prabhupada says here, those who are really conversant with this knowledge can utilize everything for the service of the Lord because nothing in this material world is unconnected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's why Narada Muni is making this philosophical presentation. Saying, try to see behind everything, the master puppeteer, the real Wizard of Oz is Krishna. To use a pop culture reference. I hope that one's okay because it's very, very old. But the man behind the curtain, the cause of all causes is Krishna. He says, try to see. Try to understand philosophically. There must be a cause of all causes. There must be an original mover. There's another Aristotelian philosophy. What did he call it? The first mover. We see that all of material nature is in motion. It's in constant flux. It's in constant change. One thing is causing another thing. There's all this chain of reaction. But he said there must necessarily be an original mover, something that causes all of that to start. Even if for the material nature, it's like God just pushing one button, like turning on a washing machine and we're all getting scrubbed in this material world. Still, there must be an original mover. A supreme cause. So now the Muni is trying to focus our attention on that, try to understand philosophically the need for a supreme creator, an original cause of everything. You know who said that? In the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the wives of Kalyanaga. I'm not going to be able to find the verse. And if you're able to find the verse, Taraka Prabhu, I'll be very impressed. But they made some statement to this effect, how we know the Supreme Personality of Godhead because there is a need for an original cause, like it's necessary. This is the point they were making. And I guess Aristotle learned from them, from the wives of Kalyanaga. That's no doubt, that's where he got his inspiration, Bhakta Aristotle. So they said something to the effect that we know the Supreme Lord in that there is a need for an original cause. So if we understand philosophically, then we have faith. It's not the sort of sentimental faith that we grew up with in our Christian or Catholic church, where faith means you don't understand, but you just do it anyway. The faith described in Bhakti Yoga, in Srimad Bhagavatam, is a faith born out of more knowledge. The more you know about something, the more you have faith in it. If you understand all the different parts of your car and how they work, then you have more faith. Oh, this is how it works. I can be confident that it's going to get to my destination. So Narada Muni is encouraging us to have more faith by thinking philosophically about the Lord as the cause of all causes and by focusing exclusively on him. And if we have this knowledge, Prabhupada says if we're conversant with this knowledge, here we are, we're having a conversation about this knowledge, so I guess we're all conversant. Then we can utilize everything for the service of the Lord because nothing in this material world is unconnected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, what this sentence really means, if I may be so bold, what this sentence really means is Sankirtana. Sankirtana means to use everything in the service of the Lord. And that's very high level bhakti functionality, because there's a tendency for us to sometimes think that, well, Krishna is here and not there. God is present in the temple, but not somewhere else. I am one of God's people, others are not. It's kind of like a human nature. I'm not saying it's devotee thing, ISKCON thing. It's all people do this in all sorts of churches and communities everywhere. For those who are prakrita bhakta, or neophyte, the beginning stages of devotion, they tend to see some us and them. Here I am, God's chosen, his people, and there are they, those fallen heretics. They have no connection with the Lord. They're not worthy or whatever. I'm doing it right. Everyone else is doing it wrong. Even sometimes we think about other devotees like that. Grihastas like to get together and, yeah, we're doing it this way. Everybody else is doing it the wrong way. This is how you really do bhakti. But if we're conversant, I don't want to get into too much indulging in criticism, but if we're conversant in this knowledge, then we see everything is connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's the symptom of real knowledge. The broad-minded perspective to see everything in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That there's nothing that exists that is not connected to the Supreme. And so therefore everything can be used in the service of Krishna, and everyone can be engaged in the service of Krishna. Everyone can chant his holy names. Everyone can relish his prasadam. Everyone can serve his mission, serve others in the spirit of Krishna consciousness. So someone who can engage everyone in Krishna's service, that person is guru. That person is conversant with this knowledge. So it seems to me that Narada Muni is encouraging us to come to this level of understanding, a deeper philosophical level. We don't want to be just prakrita bhakta, only having faith in a sort of exclusive, limited access Krishna. Isn't there a verse Prabhupada will quote very often? Archayam eva hareye pujam yashareye hate natad bhakteshu chanyeshu sabhakrita sabhakta prakrita smita. Prabhupada quoted this verse very frequently. And it's critical of our prakrita bhakta mentality. Thinking that, wow, you found it. Taraga Prabhu, you are awesome. You're a real Shlokacharya. Let's come back to this Archayam Eva Haraye in a second. I'm going to get to this verse from, it is the wives of Kalyanag, right? They're talking about the need for a creator. They say, O Lord Rishikesh, master of the senses, please let us offer our obeisances unto you, whose pastimes are inconceivably glorious. Your existence can be inferred from the necessity for a creator and revealer of all cosmic manifestations. But although your devotees can understand you in this way, to the non-devotees you remain silent, absorbed in self-satisfaction. So this is obviously Aristotle's inspiration. Somehow he got a copy of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that's how he came up with his famous original mover, the necessity for a creator and revealer. Thank you so much for finding that. Amazing. You're like the lawyer of Bhagavatam class. You have all the references. So getting back to us coming to a higher level of devotion, we don't want to just be prakrita bhakta, thinking that we have some exclusive limited access Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada quoted this verse very often and is critical of a mentality whereby I'm concerned with the worship of the deity in the temple, my people, my little clique, my community, even my little group within my community, and that everybody else, as far as I care, they can just go to hell. This is prakrita bhakta. It's materialistic. Some people are motivated by that. I'm motivated in my spiritual life only because it makes me better than others. And I get to think about how they're all going to hell and I'm not. For some people, that's how they get out of bed in the morning. Hopefully none of the devotees, of course, but if you've done book distribution in your life, you've met some extreme born-again Christians or whatnot, and they seem to have this fetish for how other people will be burning in hell. It really gets them going. It gets their mojo working. And that's very weird. We don't want to be like that. Thinking Krishna's here, he's not there. Archayam eva haraye, pujam yashrade hate. Again, this concept of shraddha. I have faith in, just like the temple, the service in the temple, in this sort of exclusive thing here, but I don't have similar faith in honoring all of the devotees and all living entities. Pujamya, what is it? Pujamya Shrahe. Natad bhakteshu cha anyeshu. What's being said is that one must also do puja, honor, all of the bhaktas, the devotees, cha anyeshu. Anya means, and all others. So that's Sankirtana. How do we honor all others? We see them as part of Krishna, and we help to remind them of their relationship with Krishna. But that takes a very broad-minded intelligence. It takes a lot of what Narada Muni is describing here, seeing Krishna as the cause of all causes, as the origin of everything and everyone, and that everything is connected with him. So Narada Muni is encouraging the Prachetas and us to come to a higher philosophical understanding of the Lord, not just sentimental. Well, I like Krishna consciousness because it's kind of fun. The food is pretty good, and I like the music. It feels good, so I guess that's the right one for me. Yeah, that's great in the beginning. But as we mature in devotion, if we want to become at least Madhyama Adhikari, we have to have profound, comprehensive, philosophical understanding of the Lord. Knowing the Lord as the necessary creator, revealer, karna karnam, the cause of all causes. This knowledge gives us real faith, shraddha shabde, so that we can fully engage in devotional service. That's why it's so important for us to come together, read Srimad Bhagavatam, study, analyze it, think about it, use our intelligence in service to the Lord, think about it, try to understand, inquire when necessary, so we can come to a higher level of devotion. Because, the world is just so tired of sentimental religionists who never read their scriptures, who can't back up anything that any of their orthodoxy with any sort of philosophy. The world is very tired of that. We have the potential to do a lot better because we have such a profound body of wisdom here in our scriptures. So Narada Muni is encouraging us. Must come to a higher philosophical level of understanding. And that produces strong faith that Krishna Bhakti Kaila Sarva Karma Krita Hoy, just by doing devotional service, everything good will come. We all want that. We all want that experience. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments or thoughts or additions on some of these points? Because I think I've made my point pretty clearly. The verse and purport is pretty clear. So I wonder if any other devotees have some thoughts they'd like to add, or doubts they'd like to share. If you have any doubts that Krishna is the cause of all causes, it's all right. I should hope we have enough, what should I say? Like security or confidence in our community that we can also share our doubts if there are some.
I just have a trivial point.
Mm-hmm.
Adidas, although it sounds better as the original servant, his name is a German guy named Adi Dassler. That's named Adidas, and his brother split up and created Puma, sporting equipment. So there you have it. I have nothing spiritual to offer, but at least
I still choose the Sanskrit definition of the brand.
Well done.
Adidas, original servant. We should make some sort of shirts like that. Adidas.
Adidas sneakers, the shoes used to be the standard footwear of Sankirtan devotees in the 70s.
Really? Because of the Sanskrit?
Yeah.
Love it. Classic Hare Krishna.
I have a few comments to add,
yes, please.
only
now,
if
now the official footwear is Crocs. probably will be for a few more decades.
Yeah. If no one else has anything, I can add a few comments. I don't want to hog all the available time. If someone else has a question, they can go ahead, but otherwise, I'll launch into a discussion.
Please.
See what you think. I read the purport. I was, I guess it was, where are we here? Is it next to the last sentence? Oh, I'm looking at the wrong verse. Hold on a moment while I reorient myself. I'm sorry. Here we are. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada says those who are really conversant with this knowledge can utilize everything from the service for the service of the Lord, because nothing in this material world is unconnected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And our philosophy, of course, is Yukta Vairagya. And this is, I feel that it's an issue that bears some clarification and discussion, because I have seen practically that it's not always well understood. There is a tendency, particularly for very young devotees who hear the concept of Yukta Vairagya, they think, well, so everything means everything with no exceptions, and it's just, it's a wide open universe. I can do anything and find a way to connect that with devotional service. But this is not entirely accurate. There are, I could give several examples of ways in which we step outside the parameters. So for example, when we chant the holy names in kirtan, for example, sometimes we chant some things that may not necessarily be authorized, or they may be, some things actually are just, I sometimes hear just concoction, something that someone just dreamt up. It sounded nice. It's comprised of holy names, but was not given by our acharyas, and therefore not authorized. But Prabhu, Lord Chaitanya said there's no hard and fast rule. But there are rules. There actually are rules given by the spiritual master. We follow the example given by the acharyas, and we follow the directions of the spiritual master. So there's, I could cite a bunch of examples. I don't want to waste time with that kind of discussion, but through we try to understand the Vedic science through service and inquiry, with a submissive attitude, and under the guidance of Krishna. We have his words from the Shastra, and under the guidance of various saintly personalities, previous acharyas, our spiritual master, representing Krishna, which is important. And it's not that service is rendered capriciously or according to our whims, we are not independent. We're never independent. We are always fully dependent on the blessings and mercy of the spiritual master. We're trying to learn to depend wholly and solely upon Krishna, taking shelter of his lotus feet in that way. In that condition, we are always protected. But we have to place ourselves under that shelter. Do that by following his direction, either directly or coming in parampara through his representatives, spiritual master primarily. Srila Prabhupada defines capricious work in his purport to what is that? Bhagavad Gita 2:47. He says capricious work means actions without the sanction of authority. So actions require sanction. They have to be sanctioned by authority. We don't just act independently. And so Bhagavad Gita 4:34. Tadviti paripatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnanana statvadarshanaha. We approach the spiritual master, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively, render service unto him. My soul can impart knowledge unto you because he has seen the truth. And a purport to the second chapter, text 41, Srila Prabhupada says, service in Krishna consciousness is, however, best practiced under the able guidance of a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Krishna, who knows the nature of the student and who can guide him to act in Krishna consciousness. As such, to be well versed in Krishna consciousness, one has to act firmly and obey the representative of Krishna, and one should accept the instruction of the bona fide spiritual master as one's mission in life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur instructs us in his famous prayers for the spiritual master as follows. Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado yasya prasada nagati kutopi dhyayan stuvam stasya yajastri sandyam vande guru shri charanarvindam. By satisfaction of the spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead becomes satisfied, and by not satisfying the spiritual master, there is no chance of being promoted to the plane of Krishna consciousness. I should therefore meditate and pray for his mercy 3 times a day and offer my respectful obeisances unto him, my spiritual master. Tree Sundam, by the way, this is just an aside, but 3 times a day, Tree Sandhyam refers to the 3 Sandhyas, being noon and evening, which means, the Gayatri mantra. So we offer our respects to the spiritual master when we're chanting the Gayatri mantra. So, and then again, purport to the 3rd chapter, text 35, Srila Prabhupada says, everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. So, not that immediately we can do anything at all, but when we have actually transcended the modes of material nature, then we can begin to act properly in devotional service. But even then, that action is executed only under the direction of the spiritual master. 18th chapter, text 57. Chetasa sarvakarmani mayi sanyasamat paraha bhuri yogam upashritya machchita satatam bhava. Krishna says, and all activities just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. And Srila Prabhupada says in the purport that when one acts in Krishna consciousness, he does not act as the master of the world. He says, just like a servant, one should act fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. The servant has no individual independence. He acts only on the order of the master. Servant acting on behalf of the spiritual master is I'm going to skip to.
He says whimsical in that purport, right? He says one should not offer something whimsically.
Yes, and that's what I'm getting to next. He says, one should, however, note that after doing something whimsically, he should not offer the result to the Supreme Lord. So it's not that I can just, pick and choose, what I shall do and take it that because everything can be engaged in Christian service, that this is therefore something that will be accepted in devotional service. I can't. It's very clear. He says one should, however, note that after doing something whimsically, he should not offer the result to the Supreme Lord. Must be authorized. He goes on to say that sort of duty is not in the devotional service of Krishna consciousness. One should act according to the order of Krishna. He says this is a very important point. That order of Krishna comes through disciplic succession from the bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, the spiritual master's order should be taken as the prime duty of life. If one gets bona fide spiritual master and acts according to his direction, then one's perfection of life in Krishna consciousness is guaranteed. Excuse me. So, what else did I have? Every morning after my Mangala Artik, I take a look at the day's Bhagavatam verse, and I jot down some notes, some bullet points, and I write out some of my thoughts in kind of a shorthand, just some quick, just a few words to try to remind myself of what it was that I was thinking. And sometimes I look at my notes and I can't remember what I had in mind. It's not always clear to me, but anyway, that is the gist of my my thoughts about that final sentence. That because sometimes in the name of preaching Krishna consciousness, trying to cast a broad net, we sometimes think that one can variously define broad-mindedness, and for some individuals, broad-mindedness means winging it in any sort of way at all, without necessarily considering whether a particular line of action is authorized. And anyway, so that's my concern, that because I see it all the time, that young devotees particularly who have not read very extensively, who haven't heard that much, may be unaware of some specific instructions that Srila Prabhupada has given, guidance that he's given on particular things, and parameters within which we are obliged to work. Stepping outside those parameters means deviation, which is not good. So we want to stay inside the parameters. There are parameters, and we need to know what the parameters are. So, and that requires either a lot of study, or we can just simply ask our spiritual master, I have this idea, I'm thinking I can do this or that. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with this? Can I do this? Do I have your permission? Do you authorize this particular line of action? Do I have your blessings? And it's probably worthwhile as well to keep in mind the fact that sometimes even though the spiritual master does not express directly any objection, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's his preference or what he really wants you to do. For example, there were many devotees who asking his permission for them to go back to school to get this or that degree, because they thought that they'd be able to do better preaching if they had some credentials. And most uniformly, Srila Prabhupada would shoot them down. He just really didn't like the idea. He thought it was a waste of time. His policy, which was a fairly firm policy, was if you're already in school, if you're already in the process, then follow through with it. Otherwise, if not, then just with whatever you know, with whatever skills you have, you engage that now in Krishna's service, and don't waste your time trying to acquire new knowledge or skills in that way. But some devotees were very insistent, and sometimes there were, and I once researched a little bit. I think I found instances of one or two devotees that Srila Prabhupada actually gave authority to get their degree. But there were some others that he didn't necessarily object. And when devotees inquired about that, Srila Prabhupada said, well, what can I do? He's very attached to doing this. And I know that if I forbid him to do it, he's going to do it anyway. And then when he does that, then he will have committed the offense of disobeying his spiritual master, which will be very serious. And so rather than allow them to commit that offense, he just would not object. But his personal preference was different. Anyway, just something to think about. Nowadays, of course, going to school is generally no one gives it a thought. It's widely accepted. It's the thing to do. Everybody's doing it, but Srila Prabhupada really thought it was a bad idea. But that's just an example. That one could give many examples, but we're out of time. It's 8 o'clock. So thanks for putting up with me. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar. Hare Krishna. Oh, and thank you for a very nice class, Yasodeva Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Shri Radha Damodar.
Thank you, Tiger Prabhu. You always have brilliant insight on so many points. We always appreciate your balanced perspective in discussion. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Damodar ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol.
Saya berbukan. Krishna Bhakti Hoya. Karma Vajya Vishete Koya. Me prasare tu me salvata. Saktidan Dino De Dame Gante. Teja Sheto Kapito. Kema Bhakti Yaha Pe Aviryadi Natya. Vedega Yaratyaniko.
Prabhu Nityananda Chadvaita Dadadara Shiva Sadi Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare What are you
Gaur Bhaktavinda ki jai. Shri Ram Krishna Shyam Kun Radhakun Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan ki jai. Mathura ki jai. Navin Dham ki jai. Jagannath Dham ki jai. Gita Dham ki jai. Gandamai ki jai. Gandamai ki jai. Vasudeva ki jai. Bhaktadev ki jai. Samaved Bhaktavinda ki jai. Thai Go Brahmananda Hari Go. Harinam Sankirtan Yagi ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai. Goraksha Goseva ki jai. Samsanga Samsanga ki jai. Oh, glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. Oh, glorious to Shri Guru Gauranga, oh, glorious to Shri Prabhupada. Well, if you have some spiritual master, but the only way you will be taking the faith through the ocean. About one of those people pray over where your grace with the cross of ocean with your suffering and with your Christian. Gracious in my conscience and purified by one to you from the Lord of God. Thankful to the Lord's feet and thankful to the Lord of God. Filled with undoubted lies and filled my heart to trust in you, my Lord and Father. From whom extended the family by you knows and many scripture souls there. That's spiritual life. Yeah. The spiritual life also mercy the kind of one last of the voice. O last of very merciful each of us. And give us the shade of your lover's feet. Your face for the love of the three worlds. We take shelter from this. His divine grace is the Bhakti of Son Shri Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.